consider this quote from Count Dooku just for a moment. The Jedi Order's problem is Yoda. No being can wield that kind of power for centuries without becoming complacent at best, or corrupt at worst. He has no idea that it's taken over him. He no longer sees all the little cumulative evils that the Republic tolerates and fosters, from slavery to endless wars, and he never asks himself, why are we not acting to stop this? Live alongside corruption for too long, and you no longer notice the stench. The Jedi cannot help the slaves of Tatooine, but they can help the slave masters. And now consider this quote from Qui-Gon Jinn. Even here on Coruscant, the home of the Jedi Council, there is little understanding of our purpose. We're seen as soldiers, servants of politicians, with little mention of the Force itself. And yet, our actions are reflections of our purpose. Perhaps the Jedi Council residing here in the capital is part of the problem. We are used as a weapon of the Republic, and thus, we are seen as such. Becoming too rigid is almost a risk. The tree that will not bend will snap with the wind. Both of these quotes exemplify frustration with the way the Jedi had become, and I think are foundational to understanding the philosophy of Baylan Skoll. Baylan Skoll is without a shadow of a doubt one of the most interesting villains Disney Star Wars has given us. The late great Ray Stevenson left us with a fabulous performance, and it's such a shame he wasn't here to experience it with all of us, to see the legacy he left behind and the impact on Star Wars fans all over the world. Now, despite his passing, Dave Filoni says he wants to continue his story. A survivor of Order 66, the supposedly dark Jedi is looking for what he calls the beginning, a place where the son and daughter gain their powers which began the vicious cycle of the dark and the light sides of the Force. That is what he sensed on Peridea, and what he abandoned his Padawan Shin to pursue. In doing this, we saw him at the end of Ahsoka Season 1 standing on the outstretched hand of a statue of the father, the brother, the ones, from Mortis. I've been thinking how Star Wars could bring him back, and aside from recasting in Ahsoka Season 2, if they ever were to do anything with his backstory, maybe an animation, I have a theory about one Jedi who may have changed his outlook forever, and inspired him to take on the path of the kind of Force user he becomes after Order 66, and more so by the time of the New Republic. And this is also connected to a concept we're going to talk about later in the video. Baylan seems to be a master of premonition, and he seems to be in tune with the living Force. His philosophy in many ways clashes with traditional Jedi like Master Yoda and Master Windu, council members he would have known. Going down the path of a dark Jedi following Order 66 changed his outlook from a place of loss. It made him realize the flaws of the institution of the Jedi Order. We've often talked about how Baylan has many attributes of Count Dooku. While he may have been friends with one of Dooku's closest confidants just after Tyrannus left the Jedi Order, the more I think about it, the more I realize Baylan has a lot in common with Sifo-Dyas, the unorthodox Jedi credited with having commissioned the clone army of the Republic in the first place, before Dooku had him killed, and under Palpatine's orders, took responsibility and oversaw the cloning project on the whole, hiring Jango Fett, and well, the rest is history.
Please tell your master, Sifo-Dyas, that his order will be met on time.
But prior to the events of Attack of the Clones, the reason Sifo-Dyas commissioned a clone army in the first place is because he had a vision that would change the galaxy forever. He foresaw the rise of the Sith, and the potential devastation that could wreak havoc. In response to this vision, in secret, he went to the Kaminoans to serve as a defense against the looming threat. He believed the Republic needed an army. However, his actions were not sanctioned by the Jedi Council, and he was eventually removed for his radical ideas. And much like Sifo-Dyas, Baylan had a strong ability of Force premonition, and unlike those on the Jedi Council, their visions were not as clouded. If they knew each other back then, Sifo-Dyas might have told Baylan, and after the latter survived the Great Jedi Purge, he would have seen firsthand that Sifo-Dyas was right. The hubris of the likes of Master Yoda, and the terrifying reality the Council didn't listen. This may have led Baylan down a different path. After seeing firsthand the misgivings of the so-called Jedi wisdom and the teachings of the Order he came to know. His epiphany was that if he could master the ability of foresight, he could prevent the cycle of pain and suffering. Now, fans have had various theories about what this is, what Baylan is looking for, and the connection to the concept introduced in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And even the scribble of Dave Filoni teasing Season 2 implies they're continuing the subplot in the second season, and Ahsoka Tano and Sabine Wren, maybe with the help of Anakin's Force Ghost, are going after Baylan to see what he's up to. One theory is Abeloth. He is seeking ultimate power through darkness. Others still say Baylan wants to replace the father or the brother, but Anakin may have already done this, the new father of Mortis. But Mortis gods aside, how about another theory? I think we may have been wrong. Baylan is not looking for any of this, and instead has a connection to a concept from Star Wars Legends, which was made canon in Nexus of Power. Order 66, just as it did to many survivors, made Baylan question the Jedi philosophy, and it's possible he didn't go down a route of light or dark, but instead found a different way. Some say the concept of Grey Jedi and Dark Jedi go against George Lucas's idea of the Force in canon, because light was balance, darkness was out of balance. Light is already balanced in and of itself, so there is no middle way. But there is another concept outside of dark and grey, the unifying force, an interpretation of focusing on a vergence which is not bound to the confines of light and dark, or even time and space. What if on Peridia, Baylan found this vergence, which promises Force users, much in the same way as the world between worlds, to see the past, present, and future possibilities. It's time all in one in the context of the Force. Baylan was so hard hit by Order 66, he might be looking for a way to control destiny, and this is what it's promising. Dave Filoni might sprinkle in the unifying force with the concept established in Rebels of the world between worlds. In essence, Baylan wants an end to suffering, an end to regimes like the Jedi, the Sith, the Empire, and instead wants a new beginning. The unifying force has been canonized to be a nexus, but in the expanded universe it was one of the 4 major main schools of Jedi thought, but it was very unpopular with traditionalists. Yoda himself was wary of it, because it relies on being hyper-focused with the future, instead of the present living force. And you might say, well Meg, Yoda saw Order 66 himself in a vision. He regularly had visions. Well yes, but the difference is that his outlook was that the future is always in motion. He saw them as warnings and estimations, but an over-reliance to trusting those visions in Yoda's view, especially if they involved clouding and corruption, were a gateway to the dark side. It was a very different approach to Baylan. The unifying force philosophy was only accepted by a small minority of Force users. The unifying force was thought to be present in all shining stars, surrounding and penetrating them. It combined many Force philosophies and required a lot of work in meditation. The Jedi who followed this theory believed the unifying force relied on an understanding of all of the space around them, every Force being connected in one. But Baylan is almost a darker version of Qui-Gon Jinn's own personal view. Followers of the unifying force always kept their eyes open for the future, believing in personal destiny, and this is where Abeloth and the Mortis gods come in. Baylan sees a possibility and an opening to become one of them, and that gives him introspection and a power like no other. For those who followed the unifying force, visions of the future were of particular significance, and to them, the light side and the dark side were corruptions and almost a narrow view, rendering the complexities of the Force into an extreme binary, and this is something I can imagine Baylan opposing. The unifying Force philosophy certainly seems to apply in this instance. So what Dave Filoni decides to do with the character of Baylan if he's explored in Ahsoka Season 2 is going to be fascinating and I think very deep lore, even if a lot of it is novel. Even if they don't go this direction, I think it's something adjacent to it. The vagueness of what Baylan was looking for is certainly something we're interested in. So fingers crossed, it's not ignored and it is explored when the show returns.